Hello and welcome to this episode of How to Be a Great Player. My name is Guy and today we are talking about how to be a badass bounty hunter. Bounty hunters occur in science fiction, modern day settings, fantasy settings, urban arcana settings. Bounty hunters are pretty much everywhere, and they even exist in today's modern age as real individuals who go and find those that have scarpered off and tried to hide from the law or those who are looking for them. So bounty hunters are everywhere, but how do we play a bounty hunter? If the system that you're using doesn't specifically have a bounty hunter class, where do you begin? Can a priest, a cleric be a bounty hunter? What about a Jedi? Could they be a bounty hunter? Or could a captain of a Federation starship be a bounty hunter? What about a vampire hunter? Are they bounty hunters? All sorts of questions and all sorts of answers that will not be in this video because we're looking at specifically how to be a badass bounty hunter. So we're going to be looking at things like what are the established norms? What makes a bounty hunter badass? We're going to look at attitude. We're going to look at being prepared. All kinds of cool gear and allies and all kinds of wonderful things. So stay with us as we unpack how to be a badass bounty hunter. Just a side note, if you're hoping for character builds using specific systems, it's not in this video. We're looking at the narrative aspect of how to be a badass bounty hunter. And yes, I kind of like saying it. Alright, so when we look at this badass bounty hunter, we have to look at what has been established before. What is a quintessential bounty hunter and a quintessential badass bounty hunter? Because you do get bounty hunters who are just kind of bad, or they're just an ass. They're really not badass. What makes a very good bounty hunter, a notable bounty hunter, to use a different descriptor, is we're going to look at certain things. We're going to look at attitude. The attitude of bounty hunters is fairly common across the board. We're going to unpack what that attitude should be and how you can roleplay it successfully within any kind of game system. They are tough. We're going to look at how do you make a tough bounty hunter. They're well prepared. You have to be well prepared if you are a bounty hunter. Very few bounty hunters go in without plans. So how do you do that? You have to have cool gear. Every bounty hunter that I've ever seen that's badass has some kind of weird or wonderful or fantastic thing that their equipment can do, or the equipment itself, or the armor they're wearing. It's always got to be cool, and we've got to look at that in terms of role-playing. We've got to look at their past. Bounty hunters very seldom come from a nice, stable family where the mother and the father loved each other very much, and their sister was supportive and kind to them as they went through and grew up in a wonderful environment with a very happy village where everyone got on very, very well. They then decided to become a bounty hunter because they thought it would be a fulfilling and rewarding career. That very seldom plays out true and might be an interesting backstory, but we don't necessarily look at that. We look at pasts. What else is an established norm for bounty hunters? They're incredibly focused. Bounty hunters, by nature, take a contract, go and find somebody, then bring them back, either alive, dead, or frozen in carbonite. One way or another, the bounty hunter has to basically get their mark. If you are playing a bounty hunter who doesn't get their marks, he's not really a bounty hunter. He's a bounty... not hunter. So we've got to look at how to stay focused in the game and how to make sure that that doesn't get in the way of your role-playing. We then, of course, have, as an established norm, a bounty hunter very seldom operates alone. And you can make some arguments for certain Star Wars bounty hunters, very famous bounty hunters, but even they, if you read some of the additional books, you watch some of the additional material, you start to realize they did not necessarily operate completely on their own. They always had a little background tech support and little ship support, and there were a little bit of things in the background. So we look at how to use that established norm that these are things that bounty hunters have, and how to make them work within a role-playing environment and within a player group environment. Because initially you might think that a bounty hunter is a fairly solo adventure type of character. They generally operate on their own. That's not true, as you're going to see. They generally have very specific missions which can't really allow for others to participate. Again, you're going to see that that's not entirely true. So let's start to go through each of these different things. Attitude. Now, the attitude of a bounty hunter is one of being cocky, anti-establishment. I'm the only law that I recognize because my law is a just law. I have a contract, I collect the person, I take them back to whoever signed the contract, I get paid, that's it. If I have to blow up a building, sink a battleship, or fly across the galaxy to do it, I will do it, and I will justify all of my actions because that's who I am. I am a bounty hunter, and I collect bounty from good people, bad people, it doesn't matter. I collect bounties. So they're usually anti-establishment. They're usually cocky. They are a law unto themselves. They know that they can take down individual people. They're bounty hunters. So they don't necessarily have a humility about them. You never get a bounty hunter who goes, well, I'm sort of good. I mean, I've done it before. Yes, but I'm not good. Generally, you don't get bounty hunters like that. Bounty hunters are usually brash individuals who, of course, they can get the deal done because they want to reassure their client that the money that they're going to be spending is not going on some idiot who can't actually do the job, but is going on someone who has the full capacity to do so. A lot of these attributes, anti-establishment, cocky, individualistic, survivor, self-looker-after for complete lack of English, that speaks very much to a loner type character, doesn't it? Well, it does. So you have to avoid it at all costs. You don't want to play a loner. So how do you do that? Well, there are other character types. And if you don't know what character types are, head on over to our sister channel, Bacon RPG. I've put the link below in the description. In the description, it's down there in the description, all right? It's in the description box down below the video. It talks about the different types of character that you can play. The loner is a very difficult type to play because they are, by virtue of fact, a loner. They don't want to work with groups. We don't want that. We want group play. That's what role-playing is all about, if there's more than one of you as a player. So, the other types of character that a bounty hunter could be is they could be an adventurer. They want to see what's around the next door, preferably their bounty, but if not, how can they use that to their next advantage to then find the bounty? So they could be about exploring, going out there and seeing what the world is like. They could be the protector type, where, and this would have to tie into their past, they're just trying to make the world a better place. So they're trying to protect all of humanity or all of the species that have 2 legs and 2 arms, however you want to describe it. They could be the protector type. They're trying to protect their bounties, perhaps. So instead of killing them, they try and disarm them and knock them out or freeze them in carbonite, as is the norm these days. They could be the dependable type. Now, the dependable type is the type that has a plan and has looked forward and gone, I know that all of this needs to be done, so I'm going to have it with me. That would really, really work well for a bounty hunter, because if they are prepared, they are planned, well, that's one of the attributes that are generally bounty hunter-esque. They usually have a thing for a thing, right? They don't go in unprepared, and they usually walk out looking cool. So a dependable type might be a very good character type for a bounty hunter to be. Of course, the solver might also work well for a bounty hunter simply because they're solving problems all the time. They're finding the conclusions that they need to. So the mindset of solving the tracking problems, solving getting into the impenetrable house, solving getting them out of the strong room, all those kind of things really lend themselves to the solver. So you could work with any combination of those character types to generate your bounty hunter who is all about the attitude, but who has this heart of gold behind it that makes sure that they plan for the future, that gives them solutions, but that doesn't make them isolationist or non-cooperative when working with their allies. That's the important thing here. The attitude has to be brash and cocky, but underneath it all needs to be a heart of gold because you're working with your party. Your character, if they are a bounty hunter and a traditional bounty hunter, should have and be well prepared. So how do you well prepare for an adventure? You have no idea what the game master is going to be throwing at you. How do you prepare for it? Well, it's quite simple, and it's one of the few rules I have as a player. I do my homework. I research. You scout out the building. You ask the NPCs that are loitering in the street, how often do the guards move in, move out? You go about your entire operation to build up as complete a picture as you can. You also have to have an exit strategy. So if it's a case of, all right, we've done our homework, we've worked out the patrol of the guards, that outer bailey is empty for 15 seconds when we have to run across it, the princess is in that particular tower, how do we get out? Aha, we get out by having a ballista on the other side that's being fired off by one of our allies at exactly the right moment, which will knock down that wall, and bingo, we get out. So coming up with plans, coming up with exit strategies. Your GM should interfere with those exit strategies because, well, ultimately that's part of their job, but they should recognize that you had them in place and allow them to actually play out with obviously complications, but there should still be a success at the end. At least that's if you've got a good GM, and if you don't, send them to the channel so that they can watch some of these videos and learn how to do it properly. So you've got to do your homework, you've got to do your planning and your scouting. I know that's something that a lot of players generally don't do. They just charge in. So plan ahead, do your research, and then have an exit strategy. Have an entry strategy too, of course, but your exit strategy is what really makes the bounty hunter that much cooler than a lot of other classes. So you don't just charge into the Death Star without a plan. You have some kind of plan, and you don't act until you've got it. Again, this is an opportunity for just the bounty hunter to operate. If you've maybe got a rogue class in a fantasy setting or something that allows you to do all of that investigation on your own, it could engender a very loner type bounty hunter. Your goal should be to include your fellow players, and as a result, this kind of homework should be done as a group. Perhaps you've got a big bruiser who theoretically doesn't have any social skills and has no research capacity. They can still perform a function. They can sit outside of the outpost, the castle, the dungeon, whatever it might be, and they can observe. They can watch and keep track of what happened, who went in, who went out. If you've got a scholarly type, they can go and find blueprints of the building, perhaps. They can go and ask questions of some old janitor who used to live there. All those kind of wonderful things. Charismatic characters can be sent to go and interrogate the local individuals for information, and of course be sneaky about it. So you can really work well with the entire group to get your well-planned, well-prepared status. And it's very important to include everybody, as I have mentioned multiple times. Cool gear. Now this really is a cosmetic thing, and you need to make sure that you don't push too much for your GM to give you the rocket-propelled grappler hook with the cable on it that you can climb up and down buildings with on the first go. Build up your equipment, but have an idea. Don't just go, all right, well, I've got an adventurer's backpack and I've got some rope and I've got a grappling hook. That's cool. That's not cool. That's what everybody's got. Think about your bounty hunter in terms of what is their thing. Do they blow holes in walls? Do they pick locks and just suddenly mysteriously appear in the rooms? Do they use smoke bombs when they try and escape from a space? Do they have a cool helmet? Do they have armor that does a certain thing? Is it a blaster that has a specific design on it? Is it a sword that's got a particular shape on it? So try and think of an image or an item that you can really convey to the fellow players and to NPCs that you meet. If you look at some iconic bounty hunters from the cinema, and I refer to cinema because it's a visual medium, you've got, of course, Boba Fett, who was wearing Mandalorian armor, that very red and green helmet with that very sort of Spartan visor type effect. Very iconic. And he had a flamethrower and he had a rocket pack, and so he had some cool toys that he played with, as well, of course, as a standard blaster. But it was his look that was more important. If you then turn to Blade from the Blade trilogies, he was wearing black trench coat, black shirt, black pants, black shoes, had a wicked haircut. He had his dark sunglasses, but he had his sword, which was that samurai sword, which had the handle, which if you didn't twist it when you gripped it, would send spikes out into your hand, particularly vicious spikes. So that was what made him different from the others. And the rest of his team, by the way, notice they didn't ever wear solid black when they were running with him. They'd wear other bits and pieces of camo and those kind of things, but he was the only one who always wore black. So it's about coming up with those cool ideas that sets you apart. Pulp Fiction, it's the guys who wear suits with white shirts and black ties. Very neat, very tidy looking. So again, it's about image and about coming up with your image and then sticking with it. And of course, making sure that your image is appropriate to the setting that you're in. There's no point in playing in a fantasy setting and asking for a rocket pack or a steam-powered rocket pack. Try and stick within the genre and make the most of what your genre offers you. A harsh past. Now, backstories, of course, we have covered multiple times on the channel and on Bacon RPG. If you haven't found it yet as a player resource, it is there with lots and lots of player videos on it. It was the original channel where the How to Be a Great Player started. Backstories are tricky and delicate things, and I've seen comments where people say they don't want backstories, where people say that they love backstories, and everything in between. The backstory for a bounty hunter generally is one that has driven them to wanting to seek people. Abandonment issues, all of the Freud armchair psychology type of stuff comes into play here. They felt abandoned, so now they're always looking for someone. They feel as if the world is constantly hunting them, so if they hunt the world and it can't hunt them, all those kinds of things come into play when you've got that kind of scenario running through your head. Of course, any kind of background will work, but if we're going for the quintessential badass bounty hunter, we're looking for someone who has a fairly dark past, which is why they got into bounty hunting in the first place. Now, there's no reason to say that their entire family has to be slaughtered and then set on fire and then disemboweled and then served up for lunch. It doesn't have to go that far, but it needs to be something that would drive the character to becoming a bounty hunter who's happy to just arrest and drag people off to their fate, regardless of what that fate might be. They're incredibly focused. Well, this is a skill that you as a player should have anyway. You should focus on the game that's at hand, but bounty hunters are particularly focused in terms of their objective. They don't like being distracted from it, so if they've accepted a contract to go and find somebody, they will generally try to find that person. Again, this is a red flag in terms of character creation, because if the rest of the party doesn't want to go on the bounty hunt, how do you do it? Well, that's a very tricky question, and the only way to do it is to make sure that you communicate with your players before you create the bounty hunter that you want to create a bunch of bounty hunters, so that they can play investigators and con men, and they can play the rest of the band that's going to support the bounty hunter. Or, of course, they could play fellow bounty hunters. Either way, this is where you have to chat to your players before the game, before session 0, and say, well, I really want to create a bounty hunter because I kind of like the idea of exploring, hunting down people and getting marks and all that kind of stuff. And, of course, chat to the GM as well and say, listen, would that fit within your world? And can we have that fit within the master plot that you've developed or story that you're going to be telling us? So that's one way of avoiding the focus becoming a problem, because if your character becomes hyper-focused on a contract and they put the rest of the players' characters in jeopardy or the main mission in jeopardy because they're just busy focusing on getting their mark, you start to build up a very negative space that people are not going to want to necessarily play in. So make sure that everyone's happy with that space before you go there. Then finally, allies. Bounty hunters have allies. They've got the chippy mechanic who builds cool and wonderful gadgets. They've got the old man mentor or the old woman mentor who teaches them a thing or two and gives them motivational advice. They've got the super cool, super sexy cyber hacking or spell slinging assistant who wasn't very good at their job, but then they, found the bounty hunter and they became excellent at it. Your team of people that surrounds your bounty hunter is there to make sure that the bounty hunter can do weird and wonderful and cool stuff. That's what the team is there for. Again, so about talking to your fellow players before session 0 starts, before you start your first game, about creating people who fit into that category is very, very important. Again, it's about making sure that everyone wants to do that and then just having fun doing it. And knowing that by surrounding himself with those people or herself with that group of individuals, that there is more story potential that can come out of it. And that's something for you to really, really focus on, is to see what can you do to make a party cohesive while still being this badass bounty hunter. And of course then ultimately what you need is a catchphrase, something like no disintegrations or you got served or boom, another one in the bag. Terrible, 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 terrible. Do not listen to me for advice on anything, apparently. So give yourself a catchphrase, make this badass bounty hunter and go out there and hunt stuff. Well, I hope this video has inspired you to create a bounty hunter, maybe to create a group of bounty hunters in your next session, chat to the GM about it. see what they think, because they can be a lot of fun, and the adventures that they can go on are not just in collecting bounties. There's so much more to it, especially as the bounty starts to reveal more and more about a big secret plot or a secret organization, however your GM wants to play that out. But there's many ways that a bounty hunter can have a lot of fun, and it's not just go and get X, bring back to Y. It's much more than that. If it has, hit the like button if you want to see more of these kinds of videos where we unpack the different kinds of cool classes that are out there. Well, not really classes, but occupations, I suppose, that are out there. Let me know. Give me some suggestions in the comments below, sort of classes or people types that you'd like me to unpack and discuss in a similar kind of method. Until next time, however, I wish you and yours the very happiest of playing